Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Cody Nelson, owner-manager of the Outdoorsmans in Phoenix, Arizona. Cody, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. But Jay, I got to correct you real quick. We're in Fountain Hills now.
Yeah.
I know. It's a little hard. It takes a minute to get used to saying that, huh?
It rolls right off the tongue, Phoenix, Arizona, and it's funny when I was saying I thought, they're not in Phoenix anymore, and so it's funny you say that. The old location has been forever, seemed like 25 years down there on Cave Creek,
Floyd started that in 1982 in Phoenix, Arizona, so it is a little hard to get
time.
Yeah, Fountain Hills does not roll off the tongue as much and as quickly and as readily as I would like it to. But yes, we're in Fountain Hills, Arizona now.
So, and just for the listeners out there that maybe aren't from Arizona or aren't familiar with Fountain Hills is kind of a smaller kind of sub-town, if you will, on the outskirts, and it's kind of on the outskirts of East Phoenix or East Scottsdale, and it would be, it's actually a really cool location. We drive through it all the time when we're going to Payson or going to Show Low, going up the Beeline Highway. Anytime you're going to any of the Salt River Lakes, going out the Beeline, you drive right through Fountain Hills. From a standpoint of, walk-in traffic and what have you noticed any different level of traffic being in Fountain Hills, Cody?
Jay, it's the first thing I should do is probably apologize to our west side traffic, only because we've moved farther away from them. But the east side traffic guys love it because they're so much closer now. To say we're putting the numbers together every month. Our foot traffic is definitely up. We think part of that is due to the excitement of the new building. We think that there's a lot of people from Fountain Hills that are stopping in. A lot of people stopping in on their way up to a hunt or stopping in on their way back from a hunt. So there's a lot of dynamics going on there that are are a little different for us, and so we're really just kind of paying attention and taking notice, but there is definitely growth in terms of
the reality, though, Cody. I mean, the reality is, people coming and going through the store and didn't really have anything to do with why you guys moved up there. Having Wilderness Athlete as a sister company of the Outdoorsmans, Floyd Green, kind of all under the same umbrella. I mean, having a little bit more space, having a little bit more inventory.
Well, fact is, Jay, we just outgrew the old building. We were operating, I'm not going to say inefficiently, but the building just had certain, constriction points and things that just made it difficult to move product in an efficient manner. So, long story short, we made a decision that we were going to move, and we moved into what we thought was the best location for us to continue our growth pattern and serve our customers the best way that we know how.
And also the fact that, you do so much on the internet, you do so much over the phone, your actual physical location wasn't, brick and mortar, so to speak. You do so much other business, being the optics authority and dealing with so much business and so much volume. I mean, over the phone and online orders is a huge part of your business. So you could, in essence, be anywhere to still handle the traffic that you guys do.
Absolutely. So, and it was important for us to, the guys used to work off the counter, and it was only myself and our shipping manager that had, desk space in the back, and now everybody has their own desks and space and, personal computers, and it really, it really has just made us a much more efficient, business. So, from that standpoint,
do you feel like
just had to be done.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like, being able to have your full staff answering the phones and having guys, manning the internet and answering questions and dealing with customers and answering and getting all of the info out there to the consumer with a little bit more space to move around. I mean, how important is it? Because, at the old store, it was a pretty tight space, and, you got guys on the phone, and everybody's trying to help the customer and get to the bottom of, what type of hunting are they doing, what type of optics are best for them,
Sure.
which tripod would work best. I mean, it seems like it's a great fit to be able to just everybody have their own space and desks and be able to, support the customer a little bit better.
Yeah. No, Jay, that's exactly why we moved. Is that it would allow us to keep growing and better serve the customer, and by doing that, and the constrictions that were set in front of us in the old building, we spend the time that we might have been moving product or moving product from our outside in our storage area out there. That is all spent indoors now, and much closer to the product. So the fact of it is it was a necessary move. It needed to be done. It had to be done, and we as a business could not be happier to have made the move. There's just no questions asked.
Good. I know you guys have a grand opening. You've been open for a couple months now at the new location, but you're going to kind of have a customer appreciation, kind of a grand opening, just kind of a, meet and greet style on November 18th, Saturday. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, November 18th in Fountain Hills at our location, and if I'll give everybody the address. If we can do that with the website and everything at the end, but it's from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. We're going to have most of our vendors represented. Swarovski will be here. Leupold will be here. Zeiss will be here. Leica will be here. I mean, we're going to have a lot of stuff going on. There's going to be a ton of door prizes. Enter people into drawings for free, product. Giveaways. We are going to have, there will be a section outside where we are going to have all the packs and things that, are used or gently used or, stuff that just, really has been sitting around for a while. So there's going to be kind of a garage sale style, tables and tents outside. So the idea is just to give everybody an opportunity to come out and see the shop and get to know everybody one-on-one, and we've had nothing but great response from it. It sounds like a lot of people are going to be here. So there's a lot of very cool things going on that day.
Cody,
by the way, there's 2 glassing seminars that day as well, at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Good. Who's going to put those on?
Right now it's going to be the team, probably consisting mostly of Jake and myself.
Good. So good. Well, that'll be fantastic. I know that'll be a big hit. I know you guys get a lot of requests for that.
Yeah.
So, Cody, I get a lot of feedback from listeners talking about, we've been running a promo code with the Outdoorsmans. You guys have been sponsoring the podcast, being the optics authority. I get a lot of feedback from listeners, how they call in, they tell you their specific needs, and, your guys, in essence, quote unquote, kind of grill them on, what hunts do you do most, how do you see yourself, using these optics? And sometimes I get the feedback that they go into the conversation thinking that they want to buy this optic, and after the conversation, they've changed their mind and go to a completely different direction. How important do you think it is to, have a conversation with professionals like yourself that can, all you guys are trying to do is get the best piece of equipment in their hands, and sometimes they think something else is the best when they realize that, no, there's another piece of optic that actually would be better for their needs.
Well, Jay, there's 2 things going on there. First of all, we're wanting to get to know our customers and our customer base, and what they're doing, okay? By us asking those questions and us listening, we can learn just as much from them as they're going to learn from us. And the hope is that they may call with a whole preconceived idea of what I want to go do and use, and when you ask the questions, you find out that what they think they need was completely different than what we've suggested. So and it's not always about what I say or what my opinion is or what I'm using. We are trying to understand what the buyer wants to do, and we are trying to match them up with the best optic scenario or package that is going to help them be the most successful at that given task or whatever style of hunting they're doing. And we get the phone calls every single day where a guy calls in and wants to do this, and when he really kind of gets done with it, he's like, well, man, I really didn't want a spotting scope at all. What I wanted to do was this. And you find out real quick what guys are what their main style of hunting is, and that's the whole that's what we do. It's just about listening and trying to understand and trying to fit them with the gear that's going to help them be successful.
Yeah, Cody, I get a question a lot from listeners as well, and I wanted to bring this up with you. I think, back when glassing off a tripod and guys were talking about glassing with 15-power binoculars, and people were trying to explain how to glass properly and efficiently and effectively and all of that stuff, in my mind, not by anybody's, trying to, quote-unquote, mislead or give bad advice. I think there has been a little bit, in my opinion, some bad advice given, not intentionally. I mean, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I want to get the point out to answer this question of, I get a lot of questions about gridding an area and staying in a grid pattern, and I'm adamantly opposed to a grid pattern. I'm adamantly opposed to staying in boxes, and I've talked a little bit out on the podcast before. I just thought this would be a good conversation for us to talk about a little bit. And when I say that, I don't want people to think that I never grid and that I'm, anti-gridding, but what I mean by that is I feel like people miss, especially when glassing Coues deer, especially when, maybe glassing big open mule deer country, like if you're glassing too slow and you're trying to be too systematic in the prime time glassing hours of, mornings and evenings, or say that hour in the morning, hour in the evening when most of the animals are up on their feet, I feel like you need to be glassing as fast as you possibly can and don't be stuck so much in a grid where you're so systematic that, you're left to right, then you're down, you're up, but there's a big buck standing in a saddle. And so I always tell people, like, first hour, last hour, or when you feel like the deer are on their feet, in my opinion, like, I want to look just not through my binoculars. I want to be sitting behind my tripod, and I want to just look with my eyes, and my eyes are drawn to those areas where I think they look like a deer should be there, or look like game, whether you're hunting elk or sheep or whatever. Like, so when I sit in glass, and especially like, I've interviewed Dar Colburn, my hunting partner, about it. Like, we glass very, very quickly at prime time, and we're panning around, we're scanning around, we're quickly glassing, and then as it becomes later in the morning and they start to slow down, they start to bed down, that's when a grid pattern, I think, is great. I was wondering if you could touch base on that a little bit from your perspective.
The two words that when you just said that, the two words that stand out most is when things start to slow down. I think that when things start to slow down is the time that's when your glassing should slow down, because it's obvious that things aren't moving up and moving around. You're not finding as much deer as you did, right when the sun hit, or that couple hours in there where it seems to almost always be the most active. And we've talked about it before. I think I certainly talk about it in the seminars that I've done, is that when you get up over into a spot, or maybe you're sitting there in the dark waiting for it to get light, man, I am buzzing around I'm hitting every spot that I think, whether it's a new spot or a spot I've been in 100 times, I am always trying to hit those spots that I just know look, the big word is now is Couesy or, deery or, whatever you want to call it. We're always looking for those spots first. And I always like to look for the escape routes first. Like, where, if these deer are going to hightail it out of here, where are they going to hit first? If, did I bump deer coming in here? Did I, I'm always looking around. And as the morning starts to slow, I am not a gritter all the time either, by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm always constantly moving. But even when I'm gritting, even when it's gotten really slow and you're starting to really, whether you're gritting up and down, that's a whole nother conversation. I always let the terrain dictate whether I'm going up or down or side to side. That's a whole nother conversation. But when I'm gritting, there are times that I'm even gritting that I will break the grid and go back to some of the places that I know, or I've seen deer before, or I've seen, those scenarios.
I think there has to be some organization with how you're glassing, but would you agree that if you are too meticulous and you are too slow at prime time, you likely are going to miss your target buck that's standing in the wide open? With that
Absolutely.
being said, don't you think there's a time when if you're, it's the first hour of light and you're not seeing any deer, a lot of times I tell myself, slow down. And then boom, immediately, usually within a minute or two, I pick up a deer, a tail flick, an ear flick, and all of a sudden I'm like, you get going too fast, you hot shot, like slow down and, you're going to find stuff. So, there is a happy medium, but do you feel like the information, it's kind of like the information on the cow call that was put out years ago where you're supposed to say, ew. And it's like, no, don't say it. Like, that's not what, like, they were trying to do good and saying that E-W-E, or, like EU is the sound, but it's like, no, that's done so many people wrong. It's just something with glassing. My nephew asked me the other day, he's like, how do you grit? I'm like, I hate that word. He's like, why are you being like that? I'm like, I hate the word. I hate gritting. Like, I like to pan. I like to scan. I look at it as like sweep it, like having a canvas and you're sweeping the canvas left to right, right to left, left to right until you cover it.
Exactly.
But I feel like if, the quadrant system, if you're stuck up in that left quadrant and that buck for 30 minutes has been down in the lower right quadrant, you'll never get to him.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just, I just think that's the thing is that you've got to keep, it's kind of like hitting the refresh button. You get a new screen once in a while and go, it doesn't mean you forget where you were gritting. It just means that you just, I think it just pays, to be really efficient, moving around, finding, be completely versatile to what you're looking at. Look at the places that are obvious. Look at the places that look good, and look at the saddles. Look at the open areas, and then when it starts to get slower, you start, as you want to say, sweeping the field of view or the area. But don't be afraid to break that and go back to those places that you think are, look like they hold deer. Because many times you've been in there so many times, or maybe it's a new spot, but you just know what the country looks like, and all you're trying to do is just, you just feel like, man, that looks deery over there. God, that looks good. And many times it's almost like you're kind of willing that deer to come out of there. And you know what? If you keep checking it, a lot of times it'll happen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. You had mentioned a few minutes ago how you're maybe in some sort of pattern, and I'm all for taking, I usually start at the top and glass from left to right and then back and go all the way down, on a ridge or on a mountain. I always start at the top. It's just the way I do it. But you mentioned something a couple minutes ago about you had seen something and you're kind of panning over here and scanning and gridding or whatever you want to call it. You're back and forth, but you had seen like a couple does way over here, where you actually have to move your whole field of view and move your whole tripod to look back over there. Talk to me a little bit about what you're saying about keep checking in on either A, those places in your mind, man, that looks good, I need to keep an eye on it, or B, where it's like,
right.
You're hunting in December and it's a rut hunt, and it's like, I saw a doe and a fawn there, like I need to just keep checking. Like I'm going to grid over here, but keep checking. Talk about that a little bit.
And Jay, I know we've you kind of, not that we're beating a dead horse, because we're not, because I don't think you could repeat this enough. There are times when you have seen a couple does and a fawn or whatever's going on, and there's nothing with them at the moment, but you have no idea. There could be a buck bedded in a place you can't see. There could be a buck that's just letting those does, get out 50, 60 yards from him, maybe 100 yards from him. But you and I both know, especially during the rut, that if you've got a pocket of does, there's gonna be bucks coming to check those does eventually. And I can't tell you how many times that we've been there glassing and we've seen a pocket of does. And I may go be looking over summer, but I know where those does are at. And I literally, it's like just taking stock. You go back, you check the does, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, there's where did that deer come from? Well, he could have been bedded right there the whole time and you didn't know it, or you couldn't see it, or, maybe he was in taller whatever, or maybe he came in from a different area. He's just checking those does. But if you don't keep going back to check them, you might miss that buck entirely altogether because you were caught up, searching, something that you want to have deer in it, but you're just gridding and you're kind of grid to grid. You don't want to do that just to do it. You want to break it up once in a while and break up, I call, whatever the monotony of it. So
yeah.
I think I explained that well enough, but you just want to go back and check stuff once in a while, because a lot of times your instincts are right.
Yeah.
And
it's hard when you're glassing too, and you in your mind you're like, man, I know there's a buck over there, and you're not efficiently looking, and you just got to go with what your mind's telling you, and you go back over, check it, okay, he's not there yet, and then go back, and then you're like at peace. It seems like if you're fighting in your mind all the time, I know there's a buck over there, and you're still looking way over here to the right, but there's a buck to the left. Like, go back and check it, and go, okay, and then your mind's at peace, and you can be looking over to the right, and just, you can't fight your mind. You know what I mean? You have to be at peace while you're glassing, and you have to be comfortable with what you're seeing and confident with what you're seeing. And glass with confidence, don't you think, too?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Like, even if you're not seeing anything, you got to be hepped up and be on, full alert and be really working at it.
I think that is, Jay, I think that they're, I don't know, we've talked about it before. You see people, they either pull up or walk up to a ridge, and they give it the old 10 minutes and they walk off, and you're like, man, does that guy even realize that there's deer, within 200 yards of him, and, he just didn't spend the time. So, some guys just don't have the patience for it. I guess that's, better for us that do. I'll take it, but I think that you got to go into the glassing game with, kind of like, what, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to find them.
We're going to dig them out.
We're going to dig them out, and I'm going to, Cody once told me, he says, sometimes you act like you're going to will those deer out of a tree, and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I'm thinking that.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
You keep thinking to yourself, over and over again, God, this place looks good, or that place looks good, or those clump of trees, there's got to be something hanging up in there. And sure enough, if you glass it long enough and hard enough and keep checking it, every once in a while you get made right. So you got to stay after it. You can't give up.
I know you've been hunting with the boys some on these junior hunts and October hunts and what have you. I'm curious. I haven't talked to you. I've been in Colorado and we've both been busy, but I haven't heard how it went. How did it go?
First of all, hunting with the boys was, man, it was awesome.
How
Those
old are
kids, Tanner is 12 and Ty is 14. And, they're both into club baseball, and, so, they're obviously in school, and sometimes getting them out and getting time and, trying to break away from the activities can be tough. But I'll tell you, we shot a bunch, leading up through the summer into into September, and just that time alone with them, and just walking them through the process and letting them learn. Jay, to say it's just fascinating to watch is just an understatement. And you can talk about it being prideful and joy and all the fun things that it is, but it's just fun to watch them grasp a new thing. And both of them have been doing it since they were little kids, but they're getting bigger, and there's a little bit more intensity now, and there's not so much jacking around, and not that there's not times for that, but I was really proud of them on this hunt, because the way that they glassed and the way that they stayed after it, in precisely the attitude that I'm just talking about, those kids were locked in. They wanted to find deer, and as a dad, you just sit back and go, "Oh, this is great." Dad's not doing all the work right now. This is fantastic. So
how was the deer spotting?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How was the deer spotting on the hunt?
Deer was, there were some places that we went that we definitely were in deer every day. Jay, the boys actually did super good, glassing. There was a couple spots that I went to that I think we've got a lion issue. Jake, my store manager was in here. We had gone to a spot where he found 3 skulls, and when Tanner and I were into this place, on Saturday of the hunt, we found another 2 skulls, and I think that there's some lion stuff going on. I had seen some deer in there earlier, a couple weeks prior, and I don't know what's going on, but we only saw one doe the entire time, in this one spot. So we went to another spot that certainly had more deer activity for sure. So.
Gotcha. Did you end up seeing any bucks or make any plays on any bucks?
Yeah, we were in, like I said, we were in deer every day. There was a buck that we were on Saturday morning. It's kind of one of those things. It was a 400-yard shot. There was 2 different bucks, both of them mule deer in this case. We just could not get Tanner lined up. My 12-year-old lined up and get the deer out of the brush to where we had a safe, good, clean, ethical shot. I was fine with him taking a 400-yard shot. We had practiced at that distance, but we just couldn't make it happen. So, he looks at me and I said, well, if we, you can't push a bad deal, and if you do that, it's a gamble, and if the gamble pays off, great. But if the gamble doesn't, then it becomes a problem. So,
right.
But it was, man, he was locked in though. I can tell you that. The following morning we ended up finding a deer. We made a couple 100-yard stalk, got to 225, and, let's just say that there's deer.
A lot of open air around a Coues deer.
Yeah, we just, we found a buck, and we made a great stalk, wind in our face, everything was working right, and the deer just kind of started to move a little bit when Tanner went to touch the trigger, and touch it off, and he went to move with the deer, and I literally, I think what he did was he just got out in front of him, and the deer stopped, and he just, touched it off at the wrong time. So it, and that was a lesson.
Looking back, do you think there's anything that you could have done differently, or was it just the situation, it just didn't work?
Yeah, I definitely think partially, I'll take responsibility for that, because when you're trying to when you're trying to teach a kid a language and a lingo, and we should have had a stop-start, and I did. I kind of had a hold of him, just touching him on the back of his shoulder, and I really, if I had to go back and do it all again, we weren't in any hurry. The deer weren't spooked. They weren't, it wasn't like they were blowing out of there. So, I would have slowed the whole thing down even more than we did. I would have told him to relax and let him come to a full stop, and I mean, he wasn't even walking very fast. It was just one of those.
So would you have communicated more? Like if you had to do it again, would you talk through the situation and say, now, son, these deer are not spooked. They're moving a little bit, but they're not spooked. We need to let them settle down.
Exactly.
And our shot opportunity will come. So you would have actually, got a little bit more in his face and talked to him more about it?
Yeah, I literally would have slowed the whole scenario down a little bit. And God love him, he was calm, and, he wasn't shaking, and, he just did really good. He just, we had him set up on, we were using, the Outdoorsmans, chassis system, and it was in my tripod, and it was as steady as a rock. And it just, he was panning to the left, and I think he, I wasn't looking through the scope for him, obviously, but, the way that he described it, and we talked about it afterwards, he just got out in front of him a little bit, and it just, he touched it off, thinking that him and the deer were coming closer together, and it just didn't pan out. So lesson learned, and God love him, he kept a great attitude, and we looked around that afternoon, and it was time to go home at that point. But the shooting thing, I would tell you, the most valuable thing I did the entire time was not even the live rounds. The most valuable thing I did with the kids was the dry firing. Making them pick out targets, asking me for the range, setting the turret, actually getting this, the crosshairs on the turret, making sure they're not bouncing around, and squeezing off and holding as best and still as they could, and remembering what the crosshairs looked like at the time of the trigger, when the trigger would fall, obviously, or the trigger would break, and I would do more of that, and they did. They did great doing that. I would make sure that the language that you're using with your kid, that he completely understands. We did have one scenario where I was saying middle of the body. Well, when Tanner was saying, he and I was saying middle of the body, but he was thinking, middle of the body front to back. I was saying up and down. So, you got to make sure that everything that you're talking about, that they completely understand what it means. It can't just be showing them a picture. It can't be just, you got to put them in the situations and really understand and make sure that they know what you say. When you say middle of the body, it's not front to back. Or the other one was, we got confused one day, shooting on, Tanner, when I said middle of the body, Tanner was going from the ground to the top of the back. Well, if you go middle, right, now you're basically somewhere down along the lower chest. So, right. You just got to make sure that your language is on and that he understands what you're asking him. So, it was an incredibly, valuable experience for me, and I know the boys got a lot out of it, and I couldn't have been prouder of them, and we're going to go back at it again here pretty soon. So.
Yeah, you've got another tag, 24A late December whitetail hunt
yes, sir.
With Ty, and my question is, so Ty is a little bit older.
Yep, he's 14.
And so, going through, having some communication breakdowns, as I would call them, have you talked to Ty about all of the scenarios that you were just describing, and do you feel like the more you discuss it and the more that you guys get on the same page, obviously I would think the more lethal you'll become. And I think that goes with anybody, a kid, a new hunter, even someone you haven't hunted with that's hunted for a long time. I mean, you have to be able to communicate properly.
Jay, I think the funnest part about doing this with them, and and not to bag on anything or anyone or whatever, but the funnest part about doing it with the kids right now, there's no ego involved. So when you start talking to them, and that was the funnest thing about everything that we did, is that after we did these scenarios and after the hunt or after a given situation in the hunt, we broke it all down, just like your coach would go into halftime and break down what they needed to fix, and there was no yelling, there was no screaming, there was no tears, there was no, it was just like, well, okay, Dad, well, what do we do different? How do we get, and you just talk about it, and that was the funnest part is that's when the learning happens.
Right.
The learning happens by doing it and making a mistake and correcting it. So, and that's what I was probably most proud of him is that, even after Tanner missed that buck, I knew he was upset, but he kept it together. We talked later. We had questions, and I knew he was bummed. I mean, he's 12 years old, for crying out loud. So, he wanted to, it wasn't about size of game. It wasn't about anything. He wanted to shoot a deer, and he knew he missed, and that was the fun part, though, was breaking stuff down after the fact.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's awesome stuff. Cool to hear.
Going forward with Ty, we've had conversations since, and we're going to continue to have them, and we're trying to line out times that we can go shoot in between baseball tournaments, but he's jacked up because it's such a great hunt. I haven't been in the unit in probably 10 years now, and so we're going to go back into some of our old haunts, and it's Ty's tag. It's his. He signed his name to it, and so if he tells me he wants to, as a dad, I'd like for him to say, hey, I'd like to shoot a mature deer. I think that's, personally, I think it's the right thing to do. But he may look at me and say, God, there's a 2 point stand there, I'm going to hammer it. And if that's what he wants, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I think it's so important hunting with kids is, just to let them have fun and enjoy it. And there's a time to trophy hunt, and there's a time to just go out and enjoy the hunt for what it is. And certainly if you're limited in time and what have you, going out and getting a successful, harvest under your belt, that's huge. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a spike or a 120-inch deer.
Exactly.
That's
I'll
awesome.
tell you one thing I'm not going to do, Jay. I'm not going to show them any of the Colburn pictures. Dars, that guy's setting the bar over there pretty high and keeping up with the Joneses. Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous over there at the Colburn household for sure. The December Coues deer hunts are always hunts that you really enjoy, and I know you've spent a lot of time watching those deer. What's your anticipation with the current conditions? We've been 75 days without rain, and it's still 87 degrees outside, and of course we're first moving into the second week of November. We still have a lot of time, but unless things change, it's probably still going to be dry. And what are your thoughts going into that late whitetail hunt?
Jay, I there's a couple things that come to mind. Is that first of all, everybody always talks about that late hunt and how you need to hunt the late, the last, 4, 5, 6 days of, wherever the between Christmas and New Year's, and for anybody listening that, is new to the sport or hasn't hunted that hunt before or whatnot, the one thing that I should really warn people to be very, very careful of, I realize that typically can be the best time of the year to be in the field, and you have the best, statistically probably, time to be in the middle of the rut. But be very careful of one thing. The fact that we haven't had the rain and it's been so dry, that is the point in time during that time of year that we will get a rain or indoor snowstorm that will last 2 to 3 weeks, craziness, and roads get shut down and blocked and impassable, and all of a sudden those guys that waited the last 5 days, they only get a couple days to hunt. And so I would just tell people, for the most part, if you can possibly, get out the first weekend, have a good time, if work's, constraints or whatever, but don't just, lock yourself into the last 5 days. I think I really think it's sometimes the biggest mistake people make with that late hunt. And I realize work gets in the way and all that stuff, but, if it were me, we're going to hunt the first couple days. Ty, gets off school on the 22nd. We'll hunt a couple days before Christmas, and then, we'll probably take a good chunk, afterwards, and hunt just let the weather kind of dictate what we're doing, and hopefully between now and then we've gotten some rains and things, start to take a little better shape. But, long story short, I think that's what a lot of people get sucked into, is that last 5 days, like it's the only 5 days to hunt. And I've seen good running activity in the first 5 days, and I've seen good activity in the last 5 days. So, quite frankly, I think it's just a matter of where you're hunting.
Good stuff. Well, I'm anxious to see how you guys do on that hunt. Wanted to shift gears a little bit,
Sure.
Talk about this AtlasTrainer. I'm starting to see it on Instagram, on different pages and what have you. I mean, pages not even related to you guys, in essence. I'm seeing it around. And tell me a little bit about that and the success that you've had
Jay,
with that.
It's, for people that don't know, we have a backpack frame with a belt and a harness that we now have a metal plate system with an Olympic-sized bar that allows you to slide a plate, a weighted plate on your back, so that you can simulate, field conditions, or you can. The most I've ever put on it was 90 pounds, and that's a lot. It basically just allows you to train for the upcoming hunts or year or whatnot, or some guys are just walking with it, on their nightly walks with the dog.
So in other words, the AtlasTrainer is a Outdoorsman's backpack carbon fiber frame, and on that frame it has a male part, and just like you'd be at the gym on the end of the barbell, it's a male part, and then you can slide up to, you've had 90 pounds, so 90 plates, you've had 245s, is that right?
Basically, 245s on there. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that, there are some guys that will do that. I think it's, I kind of like to and of all the people that have called, I think the most common thing is that if you see people with, a 45-pound plate, is really good, and that's a good training weight. And we've had some people that, will put like they'll put, a 45 and a couple 10s, or, a 45 and a 25, or, 235s, or it just depends on what a guy wants to do and what he wants to get out of it. But the beauty part of it is that you have a choice. You can easily regulate, or ramp up or ramp down the size and the training weights that you're using. So, and then the best part of it is that it you can purchase the AtlasTrainer by itself to put it on your existing Outdoorsman's packs, or you can purchase the AtlasTrainer system, like it is now, and then also add a backpack bag to it. So, we have many people that are keeping the actual plate system on there, and then taking the bar part of it off. And so that all they have to do is put the bar pack in and screw it tight, and they can use it again. So it's a really versatile system, and it basically just adds another element to our pack system that allows somebody to train in the off season and then go right back and using the same thing they've been training with in the field.
Good stuff. And obviously, when you guys have your grand opening, you're going to have those out there?
Yeah, we will have those out there. You will be able to try them on. And I think at this point we're still we're arranging for a little course around the park, and people can walk down the hill and walk up the hill. And so I think there's going to be a way for our customers to actually try it on and go use it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's
good
been a really good, exciting product for us. We've been having fun with it, and it's actually taken us by not surprise. I don't know if I said this before in another podcast, but we sat on that product for about 4 or 5 years before. Actually, it's probably longer than that. We sat on it because there was we showed people it, and people kind of thought it was a cool idea, but the working out and the preparation hadn't really taken the hunting scene by storm yet. And now everybody's cross training and crossfitting and doing all this, and we just felt it was a really good time, and it was completely appropriate, and the product has just done fantastic. So it's a $299 product, and I think you guys should get on the website and check it out.
Speaking of the website, you guys revamped your website.
Yes, we did. You got to keep changing things and making things current, and trying to make yourselves better and more efficient. And the team behind the scenes couldn't have done a better job with putting our new website together. It absolutely speaks to our customers. We've got nothing but good reviews. Our search bar, everything that we're trying to do is better than it was before, and I just could not be happier right now.
Well, good. Well, that's fantastic. Well, it's great to catch up with you, buddy. I've been busy, you've been busy, and we haven't touched base here lately, and but it's good to hear from you, and I can't wait to see how you do on the next hunt with Ty, and it's cool to hear how excited you are of hunting with the boys, and it seems like you're going to have way more fun with that than you do on your personal hunts, which is really cool.
Yeah, you know what, Jay, not that I don't want to go on personal hunts, but if they want to hunt and it's something they want to do, and I have told them from the beginning, don't do this for me. It's not for me. It's not me pulling the trigger. Do it for yourself. Yeah. Do it because you want to do it. And you know what? If at the end of it you try it and you don't like it, that's not a problem for me. I want them to do stuff because they enjoy it and they love it and they understand it. And it is, I got to tell you, it's really fun to watch them, kind of get into it and start asking me, hey, when are we going to go scout again, or when are we going to go look for deer again? And that's a really fun part of it for me.
That's awesome. Well, that's cool, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really
Jay,
neat.
Thank you for all that you've been doing and the podcast. I know you've been hitting huge numbers, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, and just giving us the opportunity to get on here and talk about gear and hunting and scenarios and friendships and all the stuff that we do. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Awesome, buddy. I want you, they can also check the show notes, but where can people go to find out? How can they email you? What's your phone number? Give them the full contact info.
Our phone number is 1-800 I'm sorry. Yeah, I kind of got messed up there for a second. I started to give my own personal cell phone number. That would have been busy. So the best way to do it is you can email us at info@outdoorsmans.com. You can go to outdoorsmans.com. You can look on our blog for all the necessary addresses, websites. I will give people the new address today in Fountain Hills. It's 16872 East Avenue of the Fountains, Suite 101, Fountain Hills, Arizona 85268. So I think that's something that people want to get out here and check out the great opening.
Yep, and if you want to give the guys a call, 1-800-291-8065.
That is correct.
How to reach the guys at the Outdoorsmans. Of course, you can use the J. Scott promo code and get a 10% discount on the Outdoorsmans products. Cody, thanks as always. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing with us, and have a great hunt with the boys. And I'll be looking forward to talking to you the next time.
I appreciate it, buddy. All the best to you and the family.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Talk to you later, bud.